Namaste, I'm Archana Pammi. This week we are going to be talking about discover in in various aspects of life, but starting with the topic of the mind. So the first concept that I would like to introduce is what I prefer to call it as understanding mind. Now I'm going to be using references from certain philosophies. I got to read about them and learn more about them during my yoga teacher training. However, I will also leave references to them, the books that you can read to read more about these philosophies. So, the philosophy that I'm talking about today is known as the Sankhya philosophy, and it was written by Sage Kapila. Now, one of the aspects that the philosophy primarily acknowledges, or is the baseline of the philosophy, is how to achieve freedom from the three dukkhas. Now, what the three dukkhas or three fears or three sufferings? What do they mean is he classifies them into three. One is where the pain is inflicted by ourselves, and the pain is inflicted by some other living creatures or human beings, and the third is the pain that is inflicted by nature itself. Now, I really don't know where COVID falls into. It falls into somewhere between two and three, but it is what it is. Now, how he elaborates this is he uses 25 elements to describe this, and I'll probably flash an image of that while I talk about it. Is there is primal consciousness, which is nothing but the soul, and then there is primal energy or the source of energy, which is what is called as Prakriti. Now, both of these amalgamate together to create this existence of this body. And to elaborate a little bit more, is if you've read about this somewhere in terms of the philosophy, the body comprises of these five elements of nature, which is earth, fire, water, um, air, right? So these elements are nothing but Prakriti, and they are part of your body, and you are experiencing through them certain things in life. Now, as everything is manipulated, which is why they say that there is always change happening, and something somewhere affects you, something that affects you might affect somebody else. So, put all this in place, it is established that he calls it, rather, saying that life is full of suffering. And how do um, you know, get free from this and move to liberation is what it is all about. So, what does that mean again, right? I mean, when you talk about it, I have organs which are perceptive to sense, taste, touch, and everything. So, when you are in control of these organs, not the organs being in control of you, is when you are actually better off. What it means is like you see something and you want to acquire it. That puts your mind into a form of suffering because you're always pursuing a pathway to achieve something and not just experiencing it as is. This bonds of Prakriti with which you are bound to is what is causing these sufferings. So there's a lot more detail that goes into how he elaborates how you go away from this and you disturb the Prakriti aspect of it and then achieve back into the pure state of consciousness. I'm not going to go into it right now, but just want to help you understand that the baseline at this point in time is to acknowledge that life is full of suffering and there are three types of suffering. The mind is always in that particular state. That is one. The second philosophy or the way of belief or whatever you may call it is what I want to talk about is Tantra. So I read this book by Osho Rajneesh. His books are very interesting and creatively innocent is what I would speak about. Um, because that's how I felt when I read those books. I didn't bound myself. I had to just feel free when I was reading his book. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is what he called as Mahamudra or the state of bliss, which is like moksha, liberation. And you call it different things in different philosophies, different scriptures, they call it different. So here he brings about a beautiful concept of duality. And mind always processes in terms of duality or labels, or rather, it has been conditioned to process in that way. What do I mean by duality, or what do I mean by labels? For example, she is good, she is bad, He is strong, he is weak. My mom is amazing, my mom is a pain in the ass. Things like that, right? So you associate with anything being on one side of the spectrum or on the other side of the spectrum. Now let me help you understand what does the spectrums really indicate and how they play on your mind. For example, I know that diets are crazy around the world. So let's say that somebody placed an yummy looking chocolate cake in front of you. There's two schools of extremes that you're going to go or your thoughts are going to drive you to. One is like, oh my God, it is so rich. There's so much. If I eat it today, I'll have to figure out what to do. I'm going to put on weight. I'm going to do that. And this to another extreme where you're so admired in the beauty of it, probably taking pictures and sharing it and whatnot. And then your mind is fixated on either of those extremes, that you are not focused on enjoying or relishing that bite that you're going to take. Sometimes it helps to just focus on what you're doing rather than associating yourself with labels. This is a simple example that I gave. But when you take this concept and you apply it to other things in your life, then you will realize that you associate too many labels to too many things and too many peoples, and your mind is constantly fixated on those labels rather than experiencing them. So, tying this back to the Sankhya philosophy, he talks about one thing that the consciousness is nothing but just seeing, but the action is happening because of the way the Prakriti creates those moments for you to experience. So, it is recommended that you just observe and you see rather than you get drawn by the bounds of Prakriti or start labeling things and live in that world of duality and go under pressure. So that is what I want to leave you with understanding mind. And again, why am I talking this in the context of yin? Is that first, the understanding that life is full of obstacles and the mind is obsessed with it is the first point. Second point is that understanding the mind is always seasoned or conditioned to look at things from a duality aspect or labels aspect. Now, understanding this or this awareness is the catalyst in the first step of transforming or empowering into an in life. And in the subsequent videos, I'll talk about how you could free the mind, how yoga helps, what are the other aspects of yoga that helps you free the mind as well. Namaste.